Hello again. This is part 2 of tutorial number 2 on diagramming sentences. If you've never diagrammed sentences before, please work through the tutorials in order, starting with part 1 of tutorial number 1. It will make it a lot easier for you to learn, and thank you for watching. The prepositional phrase answers the question, regard to what? Regard to the likely costs involved and the uncertainties and risks. The preposition is to. The object of the preposition, costs, uncertainties, and risks. So, let's diagram just the objects and the preposition, and then we'll worry about the modifiers of the objects. Now, the preposition, of course, the first order of business is to put our preposition dogleg on there, and to put the preposition on a slanted line with a vertical line to separate the preposition from its object, or in this case, objects, more than one. Now, when we have more than one, if you remember in the last tutorial, we spread them out. We sort of make a fork in the road and line up stack the two or more elements of the compound. Then we have a vertical dotted line that connects them. And on that vertical dotted line, we put the conjunctions. In this case, there's a conjunction between each of the sets. Now we'll look at the modifiers of the objects. Costs has 3 modifiers: the, likely, and involved. So we'll make those bold, and they're diagrammed like all modifiers, just on slanted lines. Uncertainties has 1 modifier, the definite article, the, also diagrammed with a slanted line like that. Now let's ask a question of the 3 objects of the preposition, costs and uncertainties and risks. As a group, we could ask, what sort of costs and uncertainties and risks? And the answer is the remainder of the sentence. Costs and uncertainties and risks that are inevitably associated with claims of this nature. And this is what we call a clause. This particular one is called a dependent clause because it depends on the main clause to complete it. And the reason is the linking word, that. And this word is interesting because it occupies 2 slots. Now, the way we diagram this particular one, because it modifies this triplet of objects, is we'll put a bracket in there to indicate that all 3 of these objects are being modified by this clause. And then we have the linking word. Now, you know, normally we call these things conjunctions, and this particular one, however, is also functioning as the subject of the clause. Now, a clause has a subject and a verb, like a regular sentence. In fact, a complete sentence is grammatically just an independent clause. And so we would diagram it just like we would a sentence. The subject is that, which is standing in for costs and uncertainties and risks. So you can see how it's a pronoun as well as a conjunction. And then the verb is are, and the predicate modifier is associated. And this particular modifier is one of those past participles we've run into before, the past participle of the verb to associate. And so we have modifiers then for associated. Associated how? Well, inevitably. Associated how? With claims. Associated with what sort of claims? Well, with claims of this nature. And so you see here, I think, the real beauty of diagramming, because graphically there's no difference between this dependent clause and a normal sentence or an independent clause. The only thing that tells us it's a dependent clause really is the fact that I put a box around the conjunction, indicating that it also is functioning as a pronoun standing in for the three words modified by this clause. And as you can see, in order to view the the whole sentence, we have to sort of scroll it or shrink it down. We can, I think, get rid of this now that we've done that. Give you an idea of how the thing looks in its entirety. I'll just shrink it there a little bit. There you have it. We took the decision to participate in a structured mediation process having regard to the likely costs involved and the uncertainties and risks that are inevitably associated with claims of this nature. And there you have it. You can see graphically the complexity of this. And this is called a complex sentence because it has an independent clause and a dependent clause. Now, whilst it's a bit of an accomplishment to say that you learned to diagram something this tricky, our overriding subject here is how to make your writing easier to read and understand. And I think you can see almost at a glance here that some editing would make this much, much easier to understand. Look here, we took the decision to participate, when they could just as easily have said, we decided to participate, so that you have an actual statement about what happened. The taking of the decision to participate is an interim step, and it's not very interesting. Once you've taken that decision, you can say, we decided. And being decisive is what executives supposedly get paid to do. So I can understand senior executives getting paid to decide things and then paying someone else to write it so that they didn't decide anything, but they took a decision. We decided to participate. Now, what did we decide to participate in? A structured mediation process. Well, wait a minute. Well, I understand mediation is a process, and so to call it a mediation process is, in fact, redundant. To participate. How? In mediation. Just like that. It's simple. It's quick. Everybody understands exactly what you're talking about. The context here, incidentally, is the settlement of a lawsuit without going to the bother and expense of a contest in court, which is always a good thing for managements to do. Avoid lawsuits at all costs almost. We decided to participate in mediation, having regard to costs and uncertainties and risks. Now, the having regard to is a very old-fashioned way. It's using the French meaning of regard. The French verb regarder means to look at. So they're saying with looking at the costs and uncertainties and risks. It's all kind of a roundabout way. The reason this board decided to participate in mediation rather than go to court was to reduce costs, uncertainties, and risks. The reduction of all three of those being, in fact, a large part of any board's job. So we decided to participate in mediation to reduce costs and uncertainties and risks. And our infinitive, to reduce, goes in just as if it were a preposition. Remember, we ran into infinitives and participial phrases before, and you do them just like a prepositional phrase. So, no surprise that what we end up with is something that looks quite a bit like the prepositional phrase we had in the original sentence. And we now have this. We decided to participate in mediation to reduce costs and uncertainties and risks. And that is really all you need to say.